Welcome to the Deep Dive. Ready for a journey? Today we're going to delve into the life and crimes of Carlton Michael Gary.
Oh, this one's a fascinating case.
Yeah, he's a figure you might not know,
Right.
but trust me, his story, it's a chilling look at the world of serial killers.
Definitely.
And it'll make you think twice, really think twice, about how justice actually works in this country.
The big questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got excerpts from a whole book dedicated to this case,
Oh, wow.
alongside his Wikipedia entry, so we're going from the broad strokes
Interesting.
right down to the nitty-gritty details.
I love that approach and get the full picture.
Yeah, you'd be amazed how those seemingly small details
Right.
can reveal so much about the larger issues at play.
It's true. It's true.
Okay, so let's start with Carlton Gary himself.
Okay.
Born in 1950 in Columbus, Georgia.
Oh, okay.
His early life was marked by poverty and neglect.
Unfortunately, a common theme we see.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder about the impact
Absolutely.
of those early experiences,
Yeah.
on someone's life, right?
We often see there's often a correlation we find between adverse childhood experiences
Right.
and then criminal behavior later in life.
Yeah.
It's not a direct causal link, of course.
Of course.
But it definitely plays a role.
For sure. And there's this detail that always struck me as tragically ironic.
Okay.
Gary was raised primarily by his aunt and great aunt,
Okay.
and they were maids
Huh.
for wealthy elderly women,
Wow.
given who he later targeted.
It's
It's almost like foreshadowing, isn't it?
it's definitely a detail that sticks with you. It
Yeah.
really speaks to that complex interplay
Right.
of environment, psychology, opportunity
Yeah,
in shaping, a person's trajectory.
absolutely. And by his teenage years, Gary had multiple arrests
Okay.
for robbery, arson, assault.
Oh, wow.
It's clear he was already headed down a dangerous path.
All right.
But then he moves to Albany, New York in 1970,
Huh.
seemingly looking for a fresh start.
A new start, yeah.
Yeah. Even dreaming of becoming a singer.
As if you can just leave your past behind.
Right.
Sadly, that's rarely how it works.
And just months later,
Okay.
two elderly women in Albany,
Okay.
Marion Brewer and Nellie Farmer,
Mm-hmm.
they're found strangled
Oh.
in their hotel rooms.
Tragic cases.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here is that Gary's actually caught for a robbery connected to one of these murders.
Oh.
But he gets his accomplice to take the fall for the killing.
Oh, wow.
He even testifies against him?
No way.
Yeah.
So right from the beginning, we have this question of potential injustice.
Absolutely.
Did an innocent man pay the price for Gary's crime? It's a lot to unpack.
It definitely raises questions about accountability and the legal system itself.
Definitely.
Yeah.
After serving his time for robbery, Gary's paroled in 1975
Okay.
and moves to Syracuse, New York. But instead of turning his life around, he continues to attack elderly women.
Oh, so the same pattern.
It's like a terrible echo of what happened in Albany.
That pattern's crucial.
Yeah.
The targeting of elderly women, that's a defining aspect of his alleged crimes.
Right.
And it really starts to paint a disturbing picture
Yeah.
of his modus operandi.
He ends up back in prison for parole violations and robbery,
Okay.
not for the assaults.
Okay.
Then he escapes in 1977 and goes straight back to Columbus, Georgia.
And that's where things get really dark.
This is when the Stocking Strangler emerges.
Right, the Stocking Strangler.
Between 1977 and 1978, 7 elderly women in Columbus
Okay.
are raped and murdered, with stockings often used as the weapon.
Oh, wow.
The city was gripped by terror. You can only imagine the fear.
Absolutely. The brutality of the crimes really shocked the community.
It's a period that's still remembered vividly
Yeah,
by many in Columbus.
for sure.
One detail that always gets me
Okay.
is in the case of Kathleen Woodruff,
Mm-hmm.
there was no stocking found at the scene. Do you think that points to him getting bolder?
It's hard to say for sure. I mean,
Oh.
criminals, especially serial offenders,
Right.
they often have rituals, but they can also deviate
Of course.
from them for various reasons.
Yeah.
It could be a sign of evolution
Yeah.
or perhaps an attempt to throw off the investigation.
Oh, wait, to mislead.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have this strange twist
Right.
with William Henry Hance,
All right.
who calls himself, are you ready for this? The chairman of the forces of evil.
That's a new one?
I know, right?
Yeah.
And threatens to kill black women if the Stocking Strangler isn't stopped.
Oh, wow. So a copycat.
It was a bizarre attempt to divert attention
Right.
from his own crimes.
Of course. Yeah.
But for a time, it worked.
Wow.
It certainly added to the confusion and fear surrounding the case.
It definitely muddied the waters.
For sure.
Yeah.
Ultimately, though, Hans is caught,
Okay.
and the focus returns to Gary.
Right.
He's arrested in 1978 for armed robbery. But then they find a gun that links back to him, and fingerprint evidence starts to emerge.
So it's the beginning of the end for his freedom.
Yeah.
But it's also the start of a legal battle that'll raise serious questions about the pursuit of justice.
It really will.
Yeah.
He's convicted in 1986 and sentenced to death.
Wow.
But here's where our two sources start to tell a more complicated story.
Okay. Interesting.
The prosecution presents what appears to be a strong case. Fingerprints, eyewitness testimony, the recovered gun.
Right.
But some people argue that this evidence is circumstantial at best.
And that's where investigative journalist David Rose and Gary supporters come in.
Oh, okay.
They raise several doubts about the investigation and the trial.
They point to the fact that Gary was denied state funding for his defense. There were questions about how the fingerprint evidence was handled.
Right.
And his alleged confession wasn't recorded or signed.
Oh, wow.
Plus, even with DNA testing,
yeah,
it only definitively linked him to one murder.
And remember, this was before DNA technology was as advanced as it is today.
Oh, for sure.
There were also discrepancies with the semen antigen testing,
Right.
which was, the primary forensic tool at the time.
Yeah.
The book really digs into these discrepancies and the arguments surrounding them.
Then there are the allegations that the prosecution withheld evidence.
Oh, wow.
Possibly even evidence that could have helped Gary's case.
Huh.
And some argue that there was racial bias in the investigation and trial.
Yeah.
Even linking some officials to a whites-only organization in Columbus.
Oh, my goodness.
Known for its, shall we say, questionable history.
Wow, so a lot of layers here.
It's a complex web of arguments and counter-arguments.
It's a lot for anyone to process.
It really is.
It really makes you think about the potential for error, even in the most serious cases.
For sure.
Yeah.
So where does this leave us?
That's the big question.
Is Carlton Gary a victim of a flawed justice system? Or is this a guilty man grasping at straws to avoid accountability?
Right.
It's a tough question.
That's the million-dollar question.
What do you think?
Honestly, it's one that each listener needs to grapple with themselves.
Yeah.
We can break down the arguments, the evidence, the complexities, but
ultimately, it's up to you to decide how convincing each piece of the puzzle is.
Exactly.
That's what makes these deep dives so interesting, don't you think?
I completely agree. Yeah. We're not here to give you all the answers, rather to provide you with the information and the different perspectives.
For sure.
So you can draw your own conclusions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it really hits home when you consider that 1975 case.
Oh, yeah.
Gary was later linked through DNA evidence to the rape and murder of 40-year-old Marion Fisher in New York.
Right, right.
That case predates the Stocking Strangler murders in Columbus.
It does.
Which adds another layer of complexity.
It does. It really does.
To his story,
Yeah.
It makes you wonder
it does.
if this was an isolated incident or if there could be other victims out there.
Yeah, that's a haunting thought.
It is a haunting thought.
A haunting thought.
And it highlights the limitations of even our most advanced forensic techniques.
Exactly.
We may never know the full extent
right.
of his alleged crimes.
Yeah, and it's a stark reminder that the pursuit of justice, it's often an ongoing process.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we're left with more questions than answers.
For sure. And all of this, of course, plays out against the backdrop of a legal system that isn't always perfect.
Well, no system is.
What are your thoughts on how these systemic issues might have impacted the Gary case?
Well, no system created by humans is flawless.
Right.
And the justice system, it's no exception. There's always going to be limitations, biases, and the potential for human error.
In the Gary case,
yeah,
those nuances become incredibly significant.
They do.
Especially when you consider that we're talking about life and death.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It makes his execution in 2018 all the more poignant.
Yeah, I mean...
He refused to make a final statement.
Wow.
Leaving so many questions unanswered.
That silence is deafening, isn't it?
It really is.
Was it defiance?
Yeah.
Resignation? Or something else entirely?
I just don't know.
We're left to speculate about what was going through his mind in those final moments.
It's almost like the ending of a book that leaves you wanting more.
It is.
But in a deeply unsettling way.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why this case continues to fascinate and trouble people
For sure.
It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that justice isn't always clear-cut or easily achieved.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the life and crimes of Carlton Michael Gary, let's take a step back and consider what we've learned. We've explored his troubled childhood, the string of brutal murders attributed to him, and the persistent doubts surrounding his conviction.
His early life, marked by poverty and trauma, it raises questions about the role of environment and circumstance in shaping a person's path.
For sure.
It's not an excuse for criminal behavior, but it's a factor that can't be ignored.
Right. You can't just discount it.
Exactly.
We've also examined the evidence presented against him, both the seemingly strong points and the points that have been challenged by those who believe he was wrongly convicted.
Absolutely.
The DNA evidence, the fingerprints, the eyewitness testimony, these all played a part.
They did.
In the prosecution's case.
But, even seemingly solid evidence can be interpreted in different ways.
Absolutely.
And there are often gaps and inconsistencies, for sure, that raise doubts.
Absolutely. And then there are the broader issues of potential racial bias, the denial of state funding for his defense, the alleged withholding of evidence by the prosecution. These factors add another layer of complexity to the case.
It's a stark reminder that the justice system, while designed to be fair and impartial, is susceptible to human failings.
Of course.
And systemic biases.
It is.
And in a case like this where the stakes are so high, those failings can have devastating consequences.
Absolutely. It's a lot to consider.
It is.
And it really challenges us to think critically.
Absolutely.
About how justice is pursued and achieved.
The Carlton Gary case, it isn't just about one man and his alleged crimes. It's a reflection of our society, our institutions, and the complexities of seeking truth and justice in a world where things are rarely black and white.
It forces us to ask tough questions.
She does.
How do we balance the need for justice with the recognition that mistakes can be made? How do we ensure that everyone, regardless of their background or circumstances, has access to a fair trial?
These are important questions.
And how do we, as individuals, navigate a world where certainty is often elusive and the search for truth can be a long and winding road?
These questions go far beyond this specific case.
They do.
They resonate in every aspect of our lives.
Absolutely.
From our personal relationships to our understanding of the world around us.
Right, and that's what makes these deep dives so valuable.
Exactly.
It's not just about learning the facts of a case, but about grappling with the larger questions they raise.
Absolutely.
So as we come to the end of this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final question to ponder.
All right.
Does the controversy surrounding the Carlton Gary case cast doubt on his guilt? Or does it highlight the inherent flaws in the justice system? Flaws that can complicate even the most seemingly straightforward cases. We encourage you to revisit the book excerpts and the Wikipedia entry.
Good idea.
Delve deeper into the intricacies of this case and ultimately form your own conclusions.
Remember, the most important takeaway isn't a definitive answer. But the process of questioning, analyzing, and seeking a deeper understanding.
I completely agree.
That's what makes these deep dives so rewarding.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, it's a heavy case.
It is.
For sure. And one that stays with you long after you hear about it.
It really does.
It makes you think.
It does.
About the limits of what we can know for certain. Especially when dealing with something as complex as the justice system.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that even with a verdict, a story doesn't just end there.
It doesn't.
The search for truth, for understanding, that's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. If anyone listening wants to go deeper into this case, we'll have links to both the book and the Wikipedia article in the show notes.
Great idea.
So you can really dig in and form your own opinions.
I highly encourage it. This is one of those cases that stays with you, a constant reminder that the most compelling stories are often the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the complicated and troubling story of Carlton Michael Gary.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one, but we hope this has given you a new perspective.
Definitely.
On not only this specific case, But on the broader questions of justice, truth, and the challenges of navigating a world filled with gray areas,
for sure,
it's not black and white.
Remember, the pursuit of knowledge and understanding is an ongoing journey.
Absolutely.
Never be afraid to question, to challenge assumptions, and to seek out multiple perspectives.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
And we'll see you on the next Deep Dive.